Where and how do I market my coaching is probably one of the most common questions that I get asked. So very simply, what I'm going to do for you in today's video is show you the simplest, most efficient and best way to market your business so that you can get in the highest quality leads. My name is Alexandros, for short you can call me Alexi, and essentially what I do is I take the guesswork out of sales and marketing for coaches. And I do that by showing them how to leverage social media marketing strategies, how to ditch complex funnels, and how to overall have simplicity in their businesses. And at the time of recording, I've generated coaches multi-six figures in revenue through the strategies and processes that I'm about to show you today. Now, following from that, the advice that I'm going to show you today is advice coming from me generating coaches well over 20,000 leads for their businesses. Now, here's the first thing we have to consider. There are a million different people telling you a million different strategies and a million different ways of marketing your businesses. Now, to be completely truthful with you, a lot of these strategies do work, but they only work to an extent because the major element that most people seem to forget when they're helping coaches is that coaches aren't salesmen, coaches aren't marketers, and they frankly don't want to be, yet they give you complex, over-the-top processes which require you to become those things. Now, the main error that I see people making when they're trying to help coaches market their business is they tell you to use a funnel. Now, the reason that's wrong is because funnels are complex, and like I said, the coaching business model is simple, so why make it complicated? Now, before you go mad, yes, funnels work, we all know they can work, but how bloody difficult are they to get working? Right? It takes you ages to optimize each step of the process, first of all, but once you've optimized each step, you have to then make sure the leads don't slip out the bottom of the funnel. You have to constantly chase your leads, and you need a complex follow-up process or even a sales team to make it a reality that you can follow up with these people. So overall, adding a funnel into your business just requires a lot of time and effort. Like I said, probably some sort of sales support or sales team that you have to build out, and it just takes your time away from what you want to be doing, which is coaching. So please keep that in mind as I'm going through this video with you. We don't use funnels, and I strongly suggest that you don't either. So first of all, let's actually look at where do you market yourself. Again, there are a million different ways, a million different options of what you can do, but I personally have two strong recommendations in terms of where you should market your coaching business and ones that I've seen to be the most successful. Now, when it comes to actually putting time, energy and effort into marketing yourself, getting your message out there, you only need two platforms, Instagram and YouTube. Instagram for your short form content, generating leads and having conversations, and YouTube for your long form content, nurturing people at a deeper level, building that trust and pre-selling people on you and your processes. And I personally recommend these two platforms no matter what your niche is. And I strongly recommend that you stick with me through the rest of this video here because I've got some massive golden nuggets coming up in terms of platform specifics and strategies you can use to help those platforms get you leads and clients. Now, a massive misconception I see from coaches about marketing themselves is they say, oh, my target client isn't on Instagram, they're on LinkedIn. Oh no, they're on Facebook, etc., etc. Now, let me just squash that there and then before you even start going down the spiral yourself. Instagram has 3.2 billion users daily. Yes, every single day. So you're telling me out of those 3.2 billion people, almost half the population, there aren't even 1,000 people in there that you would want to work with? Of course there are. Right? So don't limit yourselves with these ways of thinking, and those stats are from Mr. Zuck himself, so I haven't just pulled those out of thin air. Now, to actually back that point up, I worked with a career coach over the course of over a year, and well, by the nature of the fact that she was a career coach, she obviously thought that LinkedIn is going to be where all of her target customers would be. Funnily enough, we actually got her to focus on Instagram, and we put all of her time and energy into Instagram, and she went from 5k in revenue in 2023 to 76k revenue in 2024. But the craziest part about all of that was over about 80% of that business came from Instagram alone. So it's not the fact that your target client isn't on Instagram, it's the fact that you haven't learned how to use the platform or how to speak to that person to get them into your world. And again, I could give you another example. I worked with an executive coach called Steve. He was the exact same position. Executive coach, you'd think, oh, hang on a minute. Executives, leaders, they're higher up, they're more professional, they're going to be on LinkedIn. Again, exact same thing. We put our focus and energy into Instagram, same outcome, plenty of leads, plenty of sales calls, and he was signing all of his clients from Instagram as well. The thing is, due to the sheer size of these two platforms, obviously Instagram and YouTube, it's pretty much impossible for you not to find your target client if you learn to position yourself correctly. Now, the other reason that I recommend Instagram as a place of where to put your marketing assets on is because Instagram just overall has the best interface in terms of content, how you can create your page, how easy it is for people to interact with you and interact with the different elements of your page, but also because you can very easily message and connect with leads. So It provides sort of like an all-in-one, and I just find it's the best and easiest to use and the simplest, which is the key here. It's all about keeping it simple. Now, if you're just starting with your coaching business, just start off with an Instagram account. Honestly, that is all you need. Start off with that, build it up. Then as you start to go further down into your marketing, then I'd recommend adding the YouTube. Now, people always ask me, oh, surely I need to have a website, surely I need landing pages, lead magnets, etc., etc., etc. But that is wrong, and I'm going to show you why in a minute properly. But as long as your Instagram covers who you are, what you do, who you help, it's enough to start, right? I've worked with coaches who didn't have a website, who literally just had an Instagram and were signing clients on. And eventually down the line, once they had the energy, the time, and the resources, more importantly, to build a website, then they built that out. At the end of the day, people just want to know you can help them. So if you can set up a professional Instagram, which covers all the check marks which a website would anyway, and if you can nurture them in the DMs and then book them in for a call, you'll be surprised at the clients you can close. So again, as I'm going through this, don't limit yourself to what's possible just because you haven't seen it done, if that makes sense. So that's just quickly on where to market yourself and why I recommend you market yourself on those platforms. Let's now properly in depth look at how do you actually do it, right? So you understand, okay, I need to put focus on Instagram to start with and then build it out and move it to YouTube. But what am I putting on there? What actually is marketing? Well, let me show you what that is. Now, obviously, there's a lot of noise out there, a lot of people out there showing you and telling you how to market yourself. But again, I'm going to go back to that point that I think the fundamental step that 90% of people miss is that coaches aren't salesmen and aren't marketers, and they don't want to be, yet they give you the most complex marketing processes that are out there. And then you're wondering why it doesn't work because you're trying to balance all of these different factors. Now, in my time of working with coaches, I can very comfortably and confidently say, I believe I've created the simplest, easiest, and most efficient way of marketing your coaching business, which most importantly, because of its simplicity, doesn't require you to have to step into the shoes of a salesman or a marketer. Now, how this works is it works on two key pillars. Pillar 1 is all about positioning you as the go-to expert. And pillar 2 is all about applying a beaker into your business rather than a funnel. So you're probably asking what a beaker is. Well, after years of using funnels, running adverts, and trying pretty much every ad strategy under the sun that you could imagine, I realized that pretty simply, funnels were just a headache. You'd spend all that time and money running the ad, creating the funnel, etc., just to lose a massive percentage of those leads that you generate. So this new beaker style of approach that I'm sharing with you here is very simply just about the way that we approach lead generation. It's not only a new mindset to lead generation, but it's also a completely new approach. Now, just by the simple design of the funnel, it is designed for leads to slip out of the bottom. So for you, that means wasted ad spend, a lot of resources required to manage this and manage this lead flow. Now, the difference of a beaker is that it retains and keeps all of your leads in your world for now and for 10 years down the line. So that way you're never wasting ad spend and you don't need excessive resources to manage these leads. So if you're wondering what a beaker actually is, I want you to think back to your school days in class, right? Think back to your science lessons. A beaker is very simply a glass container. It has one point of entry and one point of exit, so it has no throughput. So if you think of it, it's sort of shaped like this, like a sort of triangle glass container with one entry point at the top. And essentially what that means for you is that nothing can escape from it unless you physically remove it yourself. And this is how we need to approach lead gen. It's all about asking ourselves, how can we retain all of the leads that we generate and ensure that we are being as resourceful as possible? Here's the thing to consider, right? Around 10 to 20% of the market and the leads that you generate are going to be ready to buy here and now. The other 80 to 90% aren't going to be ready to buy for months or even years down the line. But what that also means though is that with a funnel you are wasting that 80 to 90% because you're just wasting those opportunities. But to me personally that makes no sense. So with a beaker it keeps leads trapped in our world, it ensures we don't lose leads, and it ensures we capture the here and now buyers. But also the buyers who are going to be ready down the line, which is obviously the key part here, because otherwise we're just wasting ad spend. Now again, the way we do this is with the type of mindset we approach this with, but also the type of ads that you start to run for your coaching business. And that mindset is extremely simple. Essentially, you're just going into it thinking, how can I create a process or a system which ensures that I don't lose the leads that I'm generating? It's literally as simple as that. And the first step to making that happen is the type of ads that you run. Like I said, it's taken me literally years, tens of thousands of pounds, tens of thousands of hours to develop this process. So I'm only going to truly pull back the curtain on this Beaker approach on how it works to only a handful of coaches that are 100% serious. So if you want to see a bit more about this, use the link in the description and the first pinned comment, because that will break that down for you in a bit more detail. But to give you a little quick insight, it's all about generating leads, trapping them and retaining them within our Instagram, so that way we have an easy way of nurturing, connecting and building trust with our potential leads so that we can book them in for calls. So now, as I mentioned, alongside the Beaker, what you need to be doing is positioning yourself as the expert that you are. I speak to so many amazing coaches who are amazing, but people wouldn't know they're amazing simply because of how they've positioned themselves and marketed themselves online. Unfortunately, in today's oversaturated markets, people, consumers, have access to way too many coaches. And think about it for yourself. If you had that much option of who to go with, would you not want to go with the best? Well, of course you would. So we need to ensure that you're seen that way, that you're seen as the best. Because what I found is a lot of the coaches that I've interacted with, worked with, they are the best. They are pretty damn good at what they do, but none of them are seen that way. So here's how you can look like the expert to help you generate leads, easily build that trust, and nurture the leads in your Beaker. So the first thing is to have some sort of market definition. Because look, if you try to serve everyone, you're serving no one, and your marketing message very simply isn't going to connect or land with anyone. So very simply, you need to define a niche. So come up with your I help statement. So what that looks like is I help X person achieve Y outcome and overcome Z problem. Now there's a very simple reason that we do this. Although you've heard it a million times, most coaches don't have a simple, clear and easy to understand niche. There is way too much noise out there today, and the only way for you to really stand out in an over-communicated society is to oversimplify your message. Let me tell you directly from myself, from marketer's point of view, is that if you don't clearly show and people can't clearly understand who your target avatar is, you have no hope in running any successful campaign. People need to feel understood. They need to feel like you get them. They need to feel like you understand their pain point. That cannot be done if you are trying to speak to more than one client avatar, or if you're trying to solve more than one overarching problem in your marketing message. So please, please, please keep it simple. So like I said again, come up with your I help statement and base all of your marketing off of that. So I help X person achieve Y outcome and overcome Z problem. If you can make sure that that I help statement is simple, it's tangible and everybody can understand it, you will be ahead of 90% of coaches. Literally as simple as that. Now, once you've picked your niche, already you're one step closer to becoming the expert that you are. Now, the second step and the way that you start to solidify your expertise for other people to see is all about the content that you start to share. Every piece of content you post is a marketing video. And every time you post a piece of content or a marketing video, I want you to go into it with this mindset. So you need to ask yourself, is this piece of content helping my dream client move one step closer to their goals, or moving them one step further away from their biggest problems? And lastly, does it make me look like an expert? Now, if when you're posting content, it doesn't fit into one of those three categories, you shouldn't be posting it very simply, because what you're putting out there is your marketing. It is a representation of you, of your business, what you do, who you help. Are you useful to the target audience that you're going after? So when you're creating content, if it doesn't fit in these brackets, in these categories, just don't do it very simply. Now, the way that you actually produce this content is very simple. You need to break it down into three categories. So category one, you need to create authority style content that solves micro problems. Category two, you need to share proof. And category three, you need to share who you are. So let's break down how to do each. Now, the authority content is produced in the following way. Now, once you've defined your niche, I want you to write down the big overarching problem that you solve for your target audience, right? And I want you to write this on a piece of paper and draw a big circle around it. Now, off of that circle, draw 10 lines to start off with. And on those 10 lines, I want you to write down 10 micro problems that add up to that big problem. For example, the big overarching problem that I solve for coaches is that I help them to get clients and to grow. What makes up that problem are obviously the micro problems. And for me, my micro problems are, for example, that coaches don't know how to run ads, they don't know how to market themselves, they don't know how to position themselves as an expert, they don't know how to ditch funnels, they don't know how to use beakers, they don't know how to create authority content, etc., etc. And first of all, these micro problems for yourself are what you need to start creating content on. And the way that you do that very simply is by sharing tips, tricks, insights, advice, guidance, ways of thinking related to the micro problems. Now, the next part, the next category, like I mentioned, is that we need to share proof, because look, at the end of the day, anybody can come online and share that they're an expert. Now, the way that you do this is simple. You need to share any evidence that you can that shows that you are the expert that you say you are. So, for example, this could be testimonials, case studies, reviews, interviews with clients, certifications or accreditations you've received. Anything that you can show or share to prove that you are an expert in this field. The last category is just to show who you are. A big thing that coaches don't realize is that people buy the coach, not the coaching. So people want to know who you are and who are they buying into, more importantly than what you're actually doing, what is your coaching. And people need to know who you are, what your story is, to see if they can relate to you. So first of all, you need to share your story in depth. A lot of you do coach from experience, and people need to see that you've walked the path that they want to walk. So share where you were before, share your transformation, share where you are now, and share what your mission is for the business. Now, the most important thing about when you're creating content like this is that you link it as much as you possibly can to your target avatar. And then lastly, really, you want to show who you are as a person. Because look, you're not just a coach, you're not just an expert, you're a human being. So show that, show people you. What are your passions, your hobbies, your beliefs? What do you get up to in your spare time? Like I said, show people who you are. So think of like your favorite TV characters, right? There's a reason that you love them so much. You love them so much because you know their passions, their hobbies, their beliefs, their values, their vices, places they hang out, etc, etc. So do this for yourself. Now, if you do everything that I've shared with you here, you'll be implementing a marketing system that has been responsible for making coaches over 6 figures in revenue. So like we said, use Instagram and YouTube, ditch funnels, use beakers, and position yourself as the expert that you are. And if you follow those steps with the advice that I've given you here, you will be absolutely flying within your business. Now, I hope you found this useful, and if you want to see how I can help you and help you to implement this into your business, use the link in the description below and the first pinned comment, which will give you a little video with some debrief on me, who I am, what I do in a bit more detail, give you an opportunity to also book a call one-to-one with me. Now, if you're not quite ready to chat, make sure to follow me on Instagram and subscribe to me here, because I'll be sharing content exactly like this every single Tuesday.